Hey guys, this is my first vlog ever. I don't normally do this at all, and I'm sorry if I'm not looking at the camera at all, but I'm looking at my monitor too, so I'm completely new to this, and I'm also using kind of a outdated webcam at this point. It's a Logitech, uh, was it C310, I think. So I don't have a great camera to use, but anyways, so I just wanted to talk about my experience as an engineer. So I have my bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. I got that while I lived in Ohio. Um, so for the most part, when you get your bachelor's degree, I mean, obviously engineering's fairly hard. You're getting a lot of experience in math. In fact, I think electrical engineering, you're like this much away from a minor in mathematics, but that's not the case. Anyways, I've had a bunch of internships. When I in my college, it was required to have an internship, and in fact, I actually had a lot of problem getting a lot of problems getting an internship sometimes. So I think it was my sophomore year. I had my first internship. I worked at a nuclear power plant. It was okay. It wasn't too bad. They knew I didn't have a whole lot of experience, so they just kind of made me. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you. There we go. That's a blue kamikaze. Ah. If you're going to engineer, you got to have a taste for alcohol, in my opinion. Probably not a good idea to move to Utah if you like alcohol. The state liquor laws here are terrible. Anyways, so I'm drinking a blue kamikaze as I do this. Calm the nerves a little bit. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem. It is tasty as hell. Anyways, so my first internship was at a nuclear power plant. I'm sorry if the heat turns on too. That's going to be really freaking loud probably, but I'll see if I can try to filter it out. But it's probably not going to work out too well. So anyways, like I said, the job wasn't too bad, but my supervisor was really passive aggressive. Like, I don't know what it was. I think it was just because I called in sick a few times. I ended up losing hearing in my left ear, so I can't hear that ear at all because of stupid reasons. And it was while I was dating my ex, so I was having a lot of issues there as well. But it always seemed like my boss was against me. Like everything I always did, he's like criticized me to the point where they actually let me go towards the end of the internship, and I only had like a month left. So the college didn't end up counting it as credit, so that sucked. But it was so stupid because the review I got back from my co-op advisor, it was, you can call them co-ops or internships, it's basically the same thing. But I got the review back, and it was something like, didn't have any technical issues, but I don't know. I guess I had a negative attitude, which when you're sitting in a cube not doing anything except trying to figure out what position you can adjust your head in to make it look like you're reading something when you're actually taking a nap in your cube. Yeah, it's hard to be a little passionate about an internship like that. Because, I mean, I didn't do anything. I did some paperwork and signed a few forms, and that was about it. So that was terrible. I got let go from that, so I didn't count as credit, and I felt like I almost got blacklisted from that stupid review. But anyway, yeah, my co-op advisor was like, "Wow, you're the first one to ever have issues with this." And I'm like, I went through a lot of problems when that happened. Like, I became deaf in my left ear, so I had to get used to that new lifestyle. My ex cheated on me like a bunch of times. It just wasn't a good time in my life. Oh, man. Sweet. If you're wondering what a blue kamikaze is, it's it's 1 part vodka, I guess technically, if you want to do it mathematically, half part triple sec, and then the other half would be blue curacao, and then 1 part lime juice, which I use Rose's sweetened lime juice, because otherwise, if you don't use sweetened lime juice, it tastes super sour and gross, and pretty much makes you feel like you're dying. I'm sorry, I keep looking down at the monitor to make sure my head's in the frame, because I don't want to be like, how's it going, guys? But anyways, so that job sucked, and then I had an internship. And by the way, when you're taking your bachelor's degree, like I said, you're learning about math. As you get towards your senior year, you take technical electives like PLCs, electro-optics. There's a whole bunch of different things, power system analysis, and a whole bunch of different other things you can go into, depending on the school that you're going to, obviously. But you're obviously not going to do a whole lot of research. It's going to be a lot of coursework. Good. Anywho, so my next internship, I worked for a professor on campus, and holy shit, that was bad. I don't know what it was at the time. I actually tried looking at internships all over the place. I applied to Intel. I had an interview with Intel, and they're like, so what happens if you put a battery, or connect a battery of 2 capacitors in series? And I was a sophomore still. I think it was towards the end of my sophomore year or something. So I barely knew anything about circuitry. I was trying to learn about electronics, because obviously that's why I'm there getting my degree. But I gave some answer like you just divide it by 2 or something. I don't know. It was a very strange question at the time, because if you're connecting capacitors with a battery, they're not really doing anything, really. It doesn't matter. It's all in the past anyways. So when I couldn't find an internship elsewhere, I turned to asking professors on campus. Oh god, blue kamikazes, what have you done to me? Anyways, so I worked for a professor on campus, and he did a lot of semiconductor research. He was looking into gallium arsenide semiconductor devices. So, I was becoming familiar with semiconductor physics, but he absolutely refused to teach me anything. He's just like, oh, Google search, my friend. Yes, he was Indian, sorry. But it was just ridiculous, because I was working with 2 other people working on their master's degree with him, and I think one was from India, the other guy was from Iran, I believe. They were both really cool guys. I really liked hanging out with them. I mean, a few times I had a few issues understanding what they're saying, but they didn't have like super thick accents. I mean, they kind of did, but it was understandable. Because I've had professors on campus that had super thick accents, and it was just bad. To the point I couldn't understand what they're saying. But anyways, so I worked for this professor for a semester, because that's how long the internships / co-ops last for. If you're wondering what the kamikaze tastes like, it is citrusy. Very, because 666 orange. Blue curacao is actually an orange liqueur as well. Maybe not straight orange. I forget what fruit, but it's basically all citrus, so it's very sour. The Rose's sweetened lime juice. My hair's all screwy, but whatever. That didn't make it better. Anyways, this professor I worked for was super entitled. Like, he would call companies and just be like, you give me diodes for free, yes? And the company would just be like, no, we won't do that. Click, and then just like hang up the phone. So I know some professors have their heads up their asses. This guy definitely had his head up his ass, to a point where they went to a conference in Cleveland, and the other people, the 2 master students went with him. And the people at the conference were like, is that your professor? And they're like, yeah. And they're just like, make sure you never mention his name on a resume ever. So, like, even he got blacklisted, which I think is why he moved to Chicago at a certain point. I didn't care at that point. So that job ended up being terrible. I actually ended up recording a few of the meetings, which I don't even think I have them anymore now. I recorded on my DVR at one point, but Yeah, I don't even know where that DVR is anymore at this point. But there were times where he's like, I need you to work with this person, yes? And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll work with that person. He's like, no, I need you to work with the person. I'm like, yeah, I'm working with that person currently, right now. And then he's like, no, you need to work. And it got to a point where I was arguing with him, and then eventually he kept fighting back to the point where I was like, yeah, sure, you're right, totally. I just kind of shut down because I didn't know what else to do. I mean, I could honestly do a whole vlog on that internship because it was so bad. Like, there was a computer science engineer that did a bunch of stuff, but then he smoked pot all the time, and he got so angry at the point where he'd pop the Windows buttons out of the keyboards because we use the Linux system, and then he'd just sometimes smash keyboards for funsies, and he had a lot of anger issues, which the pot was supposed to help, but it really didn't. And like the guys I worked with were really great, but the professor was just terrible. And he's like, you must climb tree like monkey, obtain the knowledge, my friend. And I'm like, it's a really weird analogy, but okay, I'll go for it. And I'm like Google searching everything, trying to teach myself how to do all this, and like never once was he like, oh no, you need to do it this way, or this is how semiconductors work, this is how the physics work. It was all just, oh yeah, have fun, fucker. Like, oh, okay, thanks, asshole. So whatever. Like I said, I could probably do another vlog if you guys wanted me to. And how do I do webcam? Mention in the comments below if you want to hear a vlog of how terrible my internship was with that professor. Okay, whatever. So my next internship, because you had to have at least three. I worked at a place called Invacare, which some of you may have heard, or maybe even read that name off of a wheelchair or something. They really specialize in like wheelchairs, oxygen concentrators, like just healthcare kind of stuff, living assistance. Oh god, the kamikaze, it's inside me. It's taking over. I would definitely recommend kamikazes. They taste really good, actually. I know I'm making weird faces and making weird comments about it, but it's actually pretty good. But, so I worked in Invacare. I worked as a supply chain... Oh, no, I worked as a supplier quality engineer. It's been so long, I can't remember now. I did nothing at that job, too. I did some stuff at the other jobs, but this one I literally, oh, here, they gave me an issue to work on. They're like, oh, you're an electrical engineer, right? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay, here's a battery issue we've been having with our power scooters. And I'm like, batteries are more electrochemical? And he's like, this is basically just a voltage source, right? And I'm like, well, kind of, ideally, but, I mean, the physics don't quite work out the same. They almost would have been better off with, chemical engineer, but whatever. So every once in a while, I had to make phone calls to China and do this because we were having issues, and I was trying to track these changes and all that. I ended up figuring out that 5 months into the frickin' internship, which is pretty much the end of the internship at that point, the senior engineer I kind of worked with was like, hey, did you know we have a German warehouse that does the same thing? And I'm like, wow, that's great. Why didn't you tell me 4 months ago when I got this task? So I ended up asking the German guys, and they're like, Ich wohne in einem Schachtel. And I'm like, no. Okay, that's just something I learned in German. That's, I live in a cardboard box. But, apparently the issue was the batteries. You're supposed to keep the batteries charged at about 50% while they're in storage. Our American warehouse wasn't doing that. So these batteries were just dying, and then when we ship them to the customer, it just stops working because if you let it discharge too much, then it can't recharge to the proper level anymore. There's a certain point where if lithium, I think it was lithium. Or you know what? No, I think it was might have been a lead battery or something. essentially, if you let discharge down to 0, it's hard. You like almost have no chance of getting it back to 100%. Lithium ion batteries aren't quite like that, at least, thank God. But yeah, these batteries, if you let there's supposed to be a protection circuit, but like they just let them sit on a shelf for so long that it didn't even matter at that point. And then like when I learned that, I already had to tell another guy who was taking my place, "Hey, I found this issue," and they're like, "Oh, okay." And apparently, after I left, that guy broke his leg or something, and then like didn't come back to work for a long time. So I don't even know what happened with that issue. Kamikazes. Anyways, so I actually went back to Invacare because my supervisor was really cool. He just wasn't really around at all. And then he put in a review for me. It was really good. And he basically told everyone, hey, this guy would do really well in like a lab environment. I was like, that's great. I would love to be in a lab environment. That's like everybody who becomes a scientist and an engineer or like a physicist, they always want to work in a lab, just like putting shit together, seeing what explodes and what works and what doesn't. So the next time I actually came back to Invacare again, but I worked with the oxygen concentrator guys. And I didn't really get to design anything. The guy I worked with was like, hey, we can probably give you some Altium design, experience or whatever. And I was like, oh, that'd be great. But then they're like, oh yeah, so that software costs like $1,200 or something to get a license on. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. He's like, yeah, since you're an intern, we're probably not going to do that for you. I'm like, that's understandable because that's really expensive. So I didn't get I watched a few tutorial videos, but not really enough experience to be like, oh, I've designed a bunch of PCBs with this. So actually, I ended up testing a lot of AC to DC adapters in a lab environment. And I actually worked with a couple, it was quite a few of other interns that were working there too. They were all pretty much biomedical, and I think there was one chemical engineer. And like 2 of them that I directly worked with were really cool. We like went to bars in Cleveland and like went to a hot dog bar, and it was great. We had a great time. And it was just a lot of fun. And then the other interns were like, I love getting signatures. I'm just like, how are you satisfied with your job? They're like, I like getting signatures and sitting at my desk. I'm like, okay, weirdo. My job was testing these AC/DC, and then I also got to solder a few things. The guy I was working with is the electrical design guy, and I did like testing and validation for his designs. So it was like a little small circuitry, and then I tested a few solenoid valves for him as well. And when you're dealing with oxygen concentrators, you get to breathe in some of the oxygen, and you're like, so anyone looking? It is basically like my own personal oxygen bar while I was working there. You're not really supposed to do that. Don't ever do that. That's a bad idea. But that's what I did. And then there was one guy who worked there. I don't like making fun of people, but he was the class, like, what should I say, class 1 or class A, like, definition of Asperger's. Holy shit. Well, I called him Asperger's McGee. My mom's a psychiatric nurse, and I even told her, I was like, these are his symptoms. Like, does he have an issue? He's like, yeah, that's Asperger's. And I'm like, okay, that's what I thought. It's like, if you go to Wikipedia and look up Asperger's, he has every single thing. And it's pretty prominent. But he was like 50 years old, so I don't think he was diagnosed at any point in his life. But, there was one point I think he was asking me for a digital multimeter. And I did I did some sarcasm, because I'm high in sarcasm. I don't, high in sarcasm, whatever. But, most of my jokes stem from sarcasm, so whatever. So I made some sarcastic joke where I was like, oh no, not my DMM, or it was something really stupid and harmless, and then he's like, I'm gonna report you to HR, I really don't like your attitude. And I'm like, sure, dude. See what happens. I'm sure HR really isn't sarcastic or has a sense of humor at all. It was bad. I mean, I didn't say that, obviously. I told him, sorry, I apologize. Oh, this chair kind of sucks, sorry. I apologized to him, and I blew over and whatever. He stopped talking to me, and I stopped talking to him. So every time I walked in the lab, I just ignored him. Just said, whatever, I'm going to work on my own thing. So I worked on a bunch. That was actually the best internship, was my last internship. I worked on the AC to DC, and like I kept an Excel sheet of what I was doing. And I was like, "Hey, don't we have to consider these values?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's true. We need to consider those." And I'm like, "All right, sweet." So I did that. Did a bunch of calculations. I even helped create a battery test station, which was really fun as well. I used LabVIEW with that. So I actually got a lot of experience out of that with soldering and testing all these components. I didn't get to design anything, but you know. When you're testing enough things, you get to see enough patterns and circuits where you're like, hey, this circuit's not going to work because I've done this before and I've used these parts and I know this isn't going to work. So you might want to reconsider doing this, like, discharging this or whatever. So it was a lot of fun, and I was hoping to get hired by them and just go back, and that would have been back in Cleveland where all my friends are in the Midwest, and like I could have hung out with all my friends I remember back in college, and there goes the heat system. I'm hoping I can filter that out. Either way, or that it's just not too loud and you guys can just ignore that. But, no, they weren't hiring anyone. They actually let go a bunch of people because they were having issues with the FDA, and all that's fixed now, but, yeah, they weren't looking to hire an electrical engineer back. So I had to look elsewhere. Eventually, we ended up graduating, and we worked on our senior design project, which was like a laser communication device. It was kind of stupid actually, because the technology already existed. Like if you use your optical drive or whatever, even on your computer, you can use an optical drive on like a sound system. You just fluctuate the amplitude of a red light, essentially, and you can turn that into sound through an analog to digital converter. Anyways. Oh, God, I can smell the vodka on that one. So, after I graduated, pretty much all my friends got jobs that were, like, in the $60K to $65K range. And me and my one other friend were not finding jobs like that because the Midwest is fairly cheap to live in, especially like Cleveland. Ohio in general is pretty a low cost of living. If you're living near Chicago, it's a little more expensive, so salaries will be a little bit higher for engineers. But if you look up electrical engineers, like even an electrical engineer that's just starting, like you look up their average salary. The average salary is like $63K or something, and they're like, wow, that pays really well. That'd be great. But no, in reality, when you graduate and if you live in the Midwest, your first job's probably going to pay like $47K, which again isn't bad. First world problems. But it beats working at McDonald's, obviously, or working at a fast food joint or something. But, when you go out into the field expecting, like, oh, I'm totally going to get paid this range, and then you get something like 20%, even up to like 25% under the national average, you're like, well, what the hell, man? I didn't get my degree just so I can get fucking shortchanged by this. Oh, well, that's the end of the Blue Kamikaze. I've got a glass of water as well. Anyways, what I was saying. So, I had to wait, I think it was about 3 months. I think it was 3 months before I finally got a job offer. And I worked with a subcontracting company that worked for BAE Systems. So I actually worked with a company called Easy. Such a stupid name. But So I worked as a subcontractor working on aircraft electronics for Boeing. And it seemed like a cool job. Like BAE Systems actually works for a bunch of different like U.S. They work for the Air Force and all that. But they make like a bunch of cool stuff, and I was like, "Oh, cool!" You go to their website, and it's like, "Oh, wow! Look at all the stuff they're making. That's great." So when you work, I ended up having moved to Fort Wayne. I was I got my degree in Toledo, so it wasn't a far move, but it was far enough. So I worked in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Um, And I was like, wow, this is really cool. So you get to wear these blue smocks. They're like blue lab coats that prevent ESD. And the first time I put it on, I was like, man, this is going to be awesome. This is great. I feel so smart and awesome. And the guy I was working with is like, you might want to let go of that feeling right now because everybody wears those. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I got a little tour, and that was cool. I worked there for about a little over a year, like a year and 3 months. It was bad. Like, as a subcontractor, the benefits were terrible. Especially if you had a family, the benefits were like 2/3 of your paycheck weekly. We got paid weekly, so it was like 2/3 of your paycheck just to, like, for health benefits, and then it was bad. If you're an individual, it wasn't too bad, but it was still like, what the hell? And then, I'm trying to think. So the national average is about 60K, 63K for an electrical engineer. I was getting paid like 47, which, again, it's not bad, especially in Indiana's pretty low cost of living as well. But again, when you're working for 4.5 years to get your bachelor's degree, and you're like, okay, this is the range, and this is what I'm worth, because I've worked on electro-optics. I've had to take a bunch of exams of, like, refractive indices and on fiber optic and all that. Like, especially that senior year of electrical engineering, you're like, oh, I finally am starting to get a grasp on, like, Ohm's law, which is like the most basic concept. You're like, okay, that's like the most simple concept. And then you're also learning these more advanced concepts from learning electro-optics and all that. Oh, screwed up my hair. Anyways, so you're doing all this stuff, and you're like, I'm going to go out in the field and do stuff. And then when I worked for BAE in Fort Wayne, there were no standards. There were no processes. Like, even me straight out of college was like, this is not how you run a production facility. They had no production, or they had no planned maintenance. Like, stands would just break down, and they'd go, oh, I guess we'll just go replace this few things and shut this stand down. It's like, well, why didn't you replace it like 10 years ago when this part was clearly going to fail? Like, this stand is 20 years old. Fix it. And there was a bunch of stuff where it was like, oh, this is the wrong resistor value. This needs to be changed. And you'd try to send a change in, and everyone's like, no, we can't change that. Blah, 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 blah. And then like a year later, they'd find like, oh, we probably need to change this. And it's like, yeah, that's what I said a year ago. So it got to a point. I worked with some pretty cool people, but the standards were so low, and everybody was so depressed there. Like, almost everybody who worked there was just like, I wish I had a gun. And you're like, well, why is that? So I can kill myself. Oh, oh, good. I was hoping. But so, yeah, like, my depression got really bad at that point. So I was like, I'll just look somewhere else. This is stupid. So I ended up, applying for a job in Utah, which I'm here now. And it was BAE Systems, except this time I'd actually work directly for BAE Systems working on ICBMs, which is great. I was like, oh, man, Air Force, they must actually care about what they're doing. They must have actual standards. And then I finally go there. I had to go across I-80 from Fort Wayne, Indiana, all the way to, well, not Salt Lake City, but like Ogden. And I had like a trailer hitched to my V6 sedan. It was a 2002 Pontiac Grand Prix. So it was me and my dad just fucking going all the way out west. It was cool because like halfway through Nebraska, you're like, where are the trees going? You don't realize you're going pretty much straight into desert land. Anyways, this is about my engineering experience, not my moving experience. So I moved out there. I eventually had to abandon all my friends in the Midwest because I was like, hey, I'm getting a job offer out here. They're paying me. Actually, I went out to Utah and they were still underpaying me. Like, people in Indiana were making more than me while I was working in Indiana. I'm like, that's fucked up. That's not how things should work, because Utah's got a slightly higher cost of living than Indiana, just by a little bit. So I shouldn't be getting paid less than people in Indiana, but whatever. So I ended up moving in Utah, and obviously the Mormon culture's been a little weird. You get used to it. I mean, they're not that bad. Their beliefs are a little weird, like, especially with alcohol, but whatever. So I worked there, and like, you know, you think you're working on the Air Force's ICBMs. You're like, okay, this must be high standard stuff. Nope. ICBMs are super old, and there's a reason they need help sustaining it. Because, like, I worked in nuclear hardness, and it was bad. Like, they had databases that were created in the 80s that they were still trying to use with Internet Explorer. And it was just like, they would just crash all the time, and you wouldn't be able to find any of the data because they stopped like supporting some of the software too. And it was just like, you know, you guys are supporting like some of the most important weapon systems in the United States, and you guys are just kind of like, oh, we'll just use this software that barely works. You're like, I don't think that's kind of the standard you should really put yourself to, but okay. So it was a lot of my manager wasn't available at all. He would give me a task and I would finish it in like 2 days. And trust me, from my internships, I definitely know that you should definitely work on your tasks slowly. So like, if you think a task is going to take you 2 days to finish, take like a week. Because like, then you'll just have 3 days to kind of fuck around and just do whatever you want. Which isn't really the best idea. The problem is I've had a lot of jobs where I'm like, hey guys, I already finished my task. Can I get more work? And they're like, oh yeah, we got plenty of work to do. And then 2 days later, there's nothing still. Like, no one's giving you a new task. Every company I've worked for is like, oh, there's plenty of stuff to work on. And I always end up just sitting there going, okay, well, where's the work? Because I just said I need more. It's like, a lot of these tasks only take like a day or two, like, especially with these spreadsheets. You just end up dealing with a lot of people who are like, I don't know how computers work. And you're like, you gotta press the power button. And they're like, oh, wow. You're like, God damn it, what the fuck? So, I also had a manager who wasn't available, so I sent him emails. And then he came up to me, he's like, oh, I saw that you sent me an email, but it's better if we talk in person. I'm like, hey, I totally agree. If you want to talk in person, that's fine. But be fucking available to talk in person. Don't say, hey, we should talk in person, and then just walk away, which that's what happened at that job. And then our Air Force customer was like, what the hell's going on? Because, like, we're not getting the right information we need. I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is the way our manager is running this. And then I was just like, you know what? I'm out. Fuck this. And then finally, actually a university had hired me, which I'm working for right now. So I'm working on laser depaint system. So basically I get to shoot lasers at planes, which don't do that because that's really bad for pilot. I'm shooting lasers at planes while they're not being used, essentially. But it's for a laser depaint system, so it actually ablates the paint off the surface. But yeah. And then, like, while I was trying to get interviews with this university, too, I was just like, oh, yeah, so my salary ranges are around here to here. And they're like, okay, well, we'll try to look at that. And I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm probably going to have to freaking negotiate my salary again. Because I had to negotiate my salary for BAE Systems in Utah. And, like, their initial offer was really low. I'm like, what the hell, man? I'm an electrical engineer. Like, give me an electrical engineer's pay. And I had to negotiate for still under the bottom 10 percentile of Utah engineers. And I'm like, what the fuck? This is stupid. So that was part of the reason why I left, and then the other personal reasons why I just couldn't stand management there. But then this university came back and they called me and they're like, hey, so we're going to offer you this. And I'm like, oh, okay, because that's the highest I was expecting. They're like, yeah, so you want to join? I'm like, fuck yeah, get me the hell out of here, because I can't stand looking at World War II technology. So they finally gave me this task. Well, I'm basically a liaison right now. I'm not really doing engineering work. I'm basically just like here by the Air Force Base, just going, hey, this is what's happening here, and I'm trying to help these guys out. I'm not like designing the laser or anything. I'm supposed to end up just operating it and just making sure that, if the Air Force uses it, that they know how to use it. So it's kind of a cool job, and I mean, obviously I'm getting paid now, and the benefits are pretty good as well. But, I mean, that's pretty much how my engineering career has gone so far. Oh my god, I think I almost threw up. Anyways, that's pretty much been my engineering career so far. If I had any advice, if you want to get into research, because like when I got my bachelor's degree, I was like, sweet, I'm just gonna go out there and start designing circuits. It's not that hard. No. If you get your bachelor's degree in electrical engineering or even mechanical engineering or something like that, you are not going to be doing any design work unless you're super lucky. There are jobs out there that they will hire an entry-level engineer, and it depends on your experience, obviously. The electrical engineering field, from what I know, has gone kind of flatlined right now. When I was going into college, pretty much everyone was like, oh, you should become an engineer. Engineering's great. It's going to be a great paying job, which it hasn't been until now, which is like 2 years after I've gotten my freaking bachelor's degree already. I finally have the salary I want after leaving like 2 different jobs and moving across the United States. It's been an experience. If you want to get into design work, sorry about that. That was probably really freaking loud. If you want to get into design work, I would recommend getting your master's degree. A lot of people will recommend going out and getting some work experience before you get your master's degree, which on one side I kind of agree. On another side I disagree, because if you wait too long to go get your master's degree, I mean, when you get a bachelor's degree and get a job, you're not going to be doing a whole lot of math normally, from what I've experienced. You will pretty much just sit there and you might get some circuit experience. But with a bachelor's degree, people are just going to be like, hey, I need you to fill out this form, and I need you to do this Excel sheet. Like, you're basically like a Microsoft Office engineer. Like, sorry to say, but that's like 70%, maybe even 80% of the jobs out there. If you get your master's degree, you'll start doing research. But if you wait too long, your mindset of like, when you get your bachelor's degree, you're like, oh, I just did optics and I did a bunch of calculus and differential equations to figure out how a fiber optic actually truly works with, and like PLCs, and I know how to program all that and blah, blah, blah. If you go from a bachelor's degree to straight to a master's degree, you'll have that mindset still fresh in your head where you're like, oh, I can still do math and stuff. I have not done calculus. I have not done differential equations with my bachelor's degree outside of college. To the point where I don't even know how to do differential equations anymore. I barely remember. I remember the basics of calculus, but like Calc 3, where it's like vector calculus, I don't remember any of that shit anymore. Like, it's been it's only been like 2 years, but that's enough to the point where I'm like, how do I engineer anymore? Like, my engineering job has been so watered down that I don't even know if I can do a master's degree now, because I don't think I'm smart enough. Like, I got really good grades as a bachelor's degree. I mean, I got lazy a few times and kind of let my grades slip, so I ended up getting like I still got like a 3.4. I probably could have gotten like a 3.6 or something if I didn't fall asleep through some of my classes, but whatever. Um, so yeah, I mean, it really depends on what you want to do. If you want to just go straight for a master's after a bachelor's, that's fine. Then you can get, keep that mindset of doing math, and you'll be able to do more research and look more into what you want to do as an engineer. Um, the one benefit I can think of working after a bachelor's degree has been me figuring out what I want to do as an electrical engineer. Because, even mechanical engineering, civil, chemical, when you get your bachelor's degree, you kind of, some people are going to know what they exactly want to do. I was not one of those people. Like, electrical engineering is a very broad subject. The internships help, but like, I definitely didn't want to go into power systems because power systems like really bored me. I really wanted to get into like nanotechnology. I really love futuristic stuff. I love doing like research and figuring out, what's the future of humanity? We're going to have all bionic contacts or electromechanical prosthetics where people are going to basically have like laser cannons for arms. Like, people who have lost limbs and stuff will be able to become human again, essentially. Or even like optics where you're shooting lasers at stuff, or understanding like bionic contacts and all that. It's a very broad subject, and a lot of that stuff kind of ties into biomechanical. Like, a lot of this stuff ties into like mechanical and electrical engineering is like peanut butter and jelly. Like, you can't really develop an electrical system without having some sort of mechanical chassis or something to go with it. Even like some of our electrical engineering courses have been like motors and generators, which are electromechanical pieces. So you do get a better understanding of what you want to do. And when you get work experience after your bachelor's degree, you kind of understand how the work environment is. Like, I hate to say it, but you get to understand like how a cube monkey is. Like, you basically just sit in a cube and go, okay, this is how this job works. But which can also go down the management path. You can also become an engineering manager. But I always like the technical stuff. I don't like dealing with people. That's why I became an engineer, because I'm awkward. But I'm still burping up kamikaze. Probably gonna make another one after this, because this video's been going on for like 40 minutes. I didn't think this was gonna be this long, but I'm trying to think of what else there really is. I could do like a part 2 of this, but I mean, that's pretty much my engineering experience so far. I had to quit 2 different jobs to finally get where I am. And I'm still not doing design work. Like I said, if you want to do design work, you're better off getting a master's degree and then trying to get design work. Or if you have a bachelor's degree, you can get into design work, but a lot of companies that I've seen will ask for at least, it'll be a bachelor's degree plus 7 to 10 years of experience, which 7 to 10 years when you're 25 years old seems like fucking forever. But in 10 years, I'm going to be 35, and 35 is still a pretty young age. But for me, in my perspective, that still seems really old. I'm sorry to say that to anyone who's 35 or older. But, like, when you come out of college with your bachelor's degree, you're really ambitious and you want to do stuff. Like, you've learned so much about electrical circuits, and you've learned so much about the topic that you've wanted to get into. And then you go out in the work field and you don't get any of that. Like, you go out in the work field and they're like, well, here's a stack of papers, have fun. You're like, well, when do I get to design circuits? They're like, design circuits? I don't know, when you become a senior engineer? I'm like, what the fuck? I won't be a senior engineer until like 10 or 15 years from now. And they're like, yep, have fun, shit face. You're like, great. So I will admit, at the BAE job here in Utah, I did do some electromagnetic research, and like, I kind of actually did. I was pretty much the only electrical engineer there, other than like one other guy. But the one other guy had no idea how he didn't specialize in electromagnetics, so he's just like, I don't really know either, dude. Have fun. I was like, God damn it. So I ended up having to do a lot of Google searching and figuring out, oh, this is how waveguides work. So I mean, I got a lot of experience out of that, but I didn't get the pay I deserved for doing something like that. Like, oh, this is how this waveguide would work, and this is how the power would be distributed. And they're like, so that's really cool. So here's your salary that's 10% under the national average. What? I'm sorry, you want to repeat that again? Anyways. What else is there? If you're an engineer out there just trying to get your degree, like your bachelor's degree, or if you want to go on to your electrical engineering, or not just electrical engineering, but if you want to get your master's degree, like your master's of science, it's going to be tough. Like, I'm sure everybody already knows that, but it's not easy. It's not just because of the courses, but like the market right now has just been really saturated. Because, like I said, when we were all going into college, everyone was like, be an engineer. You should be an engineer. Do it. Do it, you fucking retard. Do it. And you're like, okay, I'll be an engineer, because that seems really cool. You're not going to be Tony Starks. You're not going to be like this cool Tesla inventor or anything. You're going to be going to engineering, and you're probably just going to be doing a lot of sustainment work. Like, that's the biggest field in engineering right now, is sustainment. You have to be really lucky or really super smart, and then still kind of lucky to actually get into a research field to develop new technologies. Even with me when I had my interview with Intel, and I totally fucking bombed it because, well, let's be honest, I'm not as smart as I could be, and I probably don't deserve to really work at Intel, but at the same time, it's like, man, there was a small chance I could have worked at Intel and worked on new technologies. But again, you just have to be the guy they want to be. And whatever, I'm sure you guys can Google search how to get a job, and, update your resume and all that. But that's pretty much been my experience with engineering. You guys can tell me what you think in the comments below. But I mean, obviously that's been my experience, and I'm sure it's been totally different for other people, because like I said, even the people who graduated from my class, from my graduating class in college, almost all of them got better jobs than me, and I was one of the few that were like, so where's my job? Like, everyone got a job from their internship, and my internships were all shit. Like, and then a lot of my internships were just like, we're laying off people, so we're not going to hire you, fucker. Like, thanks, assholes. But whatever. Like I said, it's different for everybody. But, if you really want to be an engineer, I've learned that doing a lot of projects at home, like working with, as much as I hate saying Arduino boards, because, like, if you're an electrical engineer and people are like, I'm an engineer, I've used an Arduino board, and you're like, no, that's not how engineering works. And they're like, but I've done derp. And they're like, look, I love Arduino because, like, they've broken down the walls so that almost anybody can be an engineer now. Like, they've simplified things. There's Arduino and Raspberry Pis, like, they make getting into engineering a lot easier. Which is fine, because I totally approve of people being smarter and, like, becoming engineers. But don't, plug an Arduino board into your computer and then, like, copy and paste some code you found online and go, I'm an engineer now. Because that's like when people Google search their symptoms, and they're like, I'm a doctor now, so I basically know that I have cancer. It's like, you should probably go to the doctor just to make sure that you don't have cancer, and that's probably some sort of, I don't know, some other issue you have. Like there's a certain intelligence level you can reach where you can Google search your symptoms and be like, okay, I have a flu, or I have a cold. Like, you probably shouldn't have to Google search that at this point, but, there's a few things like, oh, I probably have a hernia. That's pretty obvious. But there are some things like, oh, I've been having headaches all the time. And you go to talk to a doctor, and you're like, oh, Google searched this, so I'm basically a doctor, and I'm pretty sure it's cancer. And your doctor's like, no, I think you just clench your jaw too much and that you're having pain in your head. And you're like, oh, okay. So, like, there's a certain point where, yes, you can engineer a few things, but you're not an engineer. It's like, I can Google search your symptoms and you can call me a doctor, but I'm not a freaking doctor. Like, talk to your actual doctor about that kind of shit. So, it's stuff like that. But that's pretty much been my engineering experience. I know I've said that like 8 times now. But, if I come up with something else, maybe I'll make a part 2 of this. But I've pretty much covered all the basics where it's like, if you're in a position like me where all your friends graduated and they got like really cool salaries, and then you're the one who's just like, I have to look for a job now, which is becoming more commonplace now. But when we all had internships, everybody pretty much went with their company that they had an internship with. So I don't know. Maybe I just got unlucky, and then I got lucky because now I'm working for this company. So I get to shoot lasers at planes. Don't do that, because I've seen videos where people will shine little green lasers at cockpits and the whole cockpit lights up and the plane starts getting... The pilots could go basically blind. It's bad. If you actually stayed here the whole time to listen to me talk about me and my first world problems and all my bullshit that I've gone through, then hey, I appreciate it. But I was gonna say, hey, if you quit halfway through the video, then fuck you, but you already quit through halfway through the video, so you're not gonna hear this part. But anyways, I appreciate you guys listening to me. I'm sure a lot of you guys are pretty much just my friends back in Ohio or even Indiana as well. But who knows? Maybe I'll make it big on YouTube. No, I won't. I just spent a bunch of money on this microphone, and I highly doubt anything's going to really come of it. But I really appreciate your guys' time. Obviously, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have like friends back at home who would watch these on YouTube, or I'm just really narcissistic and I'm just recording this for myself like, oh God, I love listening to me talk and watching me talk. Oh yeah, Cory, talk more about engineering and how low your salary was when you came out of college, and then you had to quit a bunch of jobs till your salary was okay and actually tolerable. That was messed up. Anyways, thank you guys for watching this, and I really hope that you'll stick around. Again, subscribe. You don't have to like this video. If I said something offensive and you guys don't agree, then fucking dislike it. That's the whole point to YouTube, is if you watch someone and you're just like, wow, that was racist or really sexist, or this guy says he has problems and clearly he's just creating problems in his life, like, oh, my salary's not high enough, and you're just like, I make $7 an hour, fuck you, then dislike it. I don't care, whatever. I'm pretty much just recording this for my own sake, and I mean, that's pretty much what YouTubers do. They record stuff and they try to entertain people, give people advice. I mean, make a little money on the side, obviously, but I highly doubt I'll be making money off of this. So, I don't know. I mean, YouTube's definitely... Okay, I'm digressing a lot. That's been my engineering experience out of college. I guess technically in college, too, because I included the internship stuff. But it's kind of nice to just talk to someone because, like I said, I just moved to Utah. And I know absolutely, like, no one here. So it's kind of nice to just at least talk to a microphone or a webcam and just go, hey, these are the things I'm experiencing out here, in the real world and outside of college. And then, like, maybe my old friends back in Ohio will watch this and go, hey, that was a really cool video. You should do more of these. And I'm like, all right, cool. Because, like, I don't know. Oh, there goes the heater again. But, like, this is kind of my only way to really talk to them. I don't have an iPhone that has the FaceTime or whatever on it. So, whatever. A lot of my friends don't even text me that much, so whatever. Anyways, I I should probably end this video because it's almost been an hour, and I really wasn't expecting that. It's already freaking midnight out here and mountain time. So, like I said, I've got plenty of other videos for you guys to watch. Feel free to watch them, or don't. I really liked my abridged series that I started and then totally fucking didn't finish because I was just like, I made episode 1 and like no one's watching this, so whatever. If you guys really want me to make an episode 2, there's a comment section below, or you can email me. I don't care. It's the fucking internet. Let me know if you want me to make an episode 2 of the Zatch Bell abridged stuff, or, you know, tell me what games you want me to play, or tell me to vlog more, and I can talk more about engineering and my experiences out here in Utah, or I can talk pretty much about anything. I have a new microphone, and my webcam's not... It's not terrible, but it's not great. I might upgrade it if you guys want me to do more stuff. So, anyways, stay safe out there. Have fun. No matter how hard life gets, if you don't like something, don't do it. And, yeah, I'll just see you guys in the next video, which I'm pretty sure a bunch of YouTubers already said. I don't have an official outro yet, so see you guys later. Bye. I don't know. I looked away. Whatever. Bye.